Now, you guys know I love to tell a story. Well, for this one, I'm going to go way back to the mid-1980s before my knowledge of LOA or the teachings of Neville Goddard. So it was 1985 and I was about 8 years old. Like most little kids, I really enjoyed watching TV. Anyways, one day I saw a preview of a show that the Fox network was going to start rerunning. It was called Bewitched. I know all you guys remember this 1960s show about Samantha Stevens, a witch who marries a mortal man, right? I absolutely loved this show because I was so intrigued and captivated at how Samantha could just wiggle her nose or flail her arms and magically whatever she wanted would instantly appear. I know you guys can tell where I'm going with this, right? Like, how amazing would it be if I could do the same thing? I always thought it was so amazing how Samantha could cast spells and instantly get whatever she wanted. Needless to say, I was hooked and watched the reruns religiously. I can still hear all of the wonderful chimes and sound effects used on the show as Samantha would conjure up whatever she wanted out of thin air. So I went around the house pretending to create whatever I wanted, pointing my little finger and imagining my desires magically appearing. Of course, just the very notion that this make-believe playtime for me could actually come true was completely overwhelming for my little demigod mind at the time. Well, I didn't know it then. I know now this was the beginning of my believing that I could create anything I wanted using my imagination. Well, actually, my own wonderful human imagination, if you know what I mean. I truly began to believe the possibilities were endless for me in regard to my getting whatever I wanted just by using my newfound magical powers. Now, if this topic of witchcraft wasn't already controversial enough, I've done a lot of research on LOA and how many believe it's a really watered-down version of witchcraft, which in my opinion is not that far of a reach. Witchcraft is an actual religion for those of you who didn't know. Anyways, the religious practices of Wiccans is very similar to that of law of attraction and law of assumption when it comes to the symbolism aspect. Students of LOA and Neville Goddard, like Wiccans, use chants, charms, visualization, scripting, and focus keenly what we want our end result to be in order to create what we want. I've even heard that Neville's teacher Abdullah referred to as a witch doctor, and Neville made reference to himself as a mad mystic. So whether you agree or disagree, the similarities are arguably spot on. So, as many of you know, my grandmother, who was a staunch Jehovah's Witness, raised me. My grandmother was very curt in her explanation of everything. She would never bite her tongue about any topic, be it kid-friendly or not. While I personally was never part of the Jehovah's Witness faith, I thought it was cool because Michael Jackson was a member of the religion, and given my grandmother's personal virtues, convictions, and moral code, the religion couldn't be all that bad. My grandmother personally railed against anything of a magical nature due to it being against her religion. She allowed me to watch Bewitched, but advised me not to try and apply any of what I was watching because it was demonic. Of course, I didn't listen, and was even more tempted to maybe try and actually cast a spell for something I really wanted the way Samantha Stevens did on the TV show. So, finally, an opportunity to flex my 8-year-old magical powers arose. My 3rd grade class and I were scheduled to take a field trip to a massive old mansion turned botanical garden and museum called Cheekwood in Belle Meade, Tennessee. As it turned out, there was a huge gourmet candy shop on the property we kids were advised to have money for. For whatever reason, my grandmother didn't have the money to give me to buy candy. I was really sad and embarrassed to possibly be the only kid without money. However, before school on the day of the trip, I decided I'd use magic to get my candy. My grandmother caught me repeating my little magical incantation and forbade me to try to use magic to get what I wanted. She ultimately made me promise not to use my own wonderful human imagination to create getting the candy I had no money for. So, now me and my class are at this massive candy store, which was even greater than I dreamed. They had everything, meaning the fancy candy you'd see advertised on 1980s TV commercials. So I stood there nearly in tears while all my classmates bought their candy. A young girl who worked in the candy shop noticed me and asked what I'd like to buy. I whispered to her I didn't have any money. The girl motioned for me to wait for her at the far end of the candy counter. She eventually met me there with a thick cardboard box with the embossed Cheekwood logo on it and began to pack it full of candy. My little eyes were like saucers in disbelief. At the same time, in that exact moment, I knew it worked. It actually really worked. I was so elated and excited. There I was thinking my classmates would each have more candy than me, when in actuality I now had more candy than the entire class combined. My teacher came and stood right next to me and instructed me not to tell any of my classmates what just happened, and that she would keep my candy in her possession until after the school day. I was on cloud 9 on the bus back to the school with my mind racing about what else my magical powers could create for me. My teacher gave me my huge box of candy and admonished me to walk straight home. Now it never crossed my little 8-year-old mind of how I was going to explain this to my grandmother. When I got home and she saw what I had, she immediately questioned where and how I got so much expensive candy. I told her the girl at the Cheekwood candy store gave it to me. She squinted her eyes and right then it hit her. She shouted, "I told you not to do that," ultimately meaning using my own wonderful human imagination to get the candy. I responded, "But it worked. It worked." My grandmother, calmer now, sighed and explained that magic indeed worked, but that it was a work of the devil and that I didn't have anything to do with it. She further explained that it was dangerous to play around with magic, and that if I continued to do so, I'd have to pay for everything magic gave to me in the end. Now I was confused and a little afraid. I trusted my grandmother and knew she'd never lie to me, so I reluctantly heeded her careful warning. Thinking back on all of this now, I realized my grandmother had been conditioned and brainwashed by her cult-like religion. Thankfully, years later she left the Jehovah's Witness faith for good. I also recently realized that the character Samantha on Bewitched was always admonished by her husband, Darren, not to use magic in the same way I was. Darren never wanted his wife, Samantha, to use magic to help him get ahead in any way on the TV show. He always explained to Samantha that he wanted her to do things the mortal way, to earn things the hard way instead of using her powers to make them materialize. Now, guys, doesn't this school of thought sound familiar? Now, on the other hand, Samantha's mother, Endora, always insisted she not deny her nature and repeatedly encouraged Samantha to always use her magic with pride as a witch. I guess the parallel I'm drawing here is to not allow any person to take you off your pedestal of godhood. And I mean no one, not even the well-meaning people. Human godhood is your born right, and you should always be proud of it. I am still so amazed at how, at just 8 years old, godhood was calling to me even then as a little kid. It was no mistake, but only a prelude of the demigod I'd grow to be. I want to take this time to thank each and every one of my listeners for your undying love and support this entire year of 2023. I also want to apologize for the extended hiatus these past few months. I have so many more anecdotes and creation stories to share with you. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Also thumbs up this video and any other video you listen to on this channel. It helps the algorithm promote the channel to get more YouTube views. As always, thanks for listening. Bye, everybody.